All right. Um, are we shooting stars or are we shooting Mega Mans? I'm so confused by this theme.
We're shooting stars at Mega Man.
Oh, perfect. That works for me. Hi everybody. Hope you're doing okay today. Welcome to Total Pebble Knockdown. I believe I'm Nathan.
I believe you're Nathan too.
Great. I think you're Alex, but I can never remember.
I don't know how you remember that then.
I don't either. Our memories are totally shot, but congratulations, you will probably never forget this episode. The first thing that we have up on our plate is a soapbox, and the reason why we have a soapbox is because it seems like every time I turn on any kind of gaming news, I have to hear about a game that was halfway finished, that got released onto the market, that really needed more time in the oven, that they tried to convince you should have been a complete game you can pay for full price.
Yeah, it needs more time in the oven, but why don't you consume that bread anyways?
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if you just bought the dough, and we'll just promise that it will be a loaf of bread at some point.
Yeah,
And
just
pay us
sometime in the future.
Yeah, just pay it for us. Pay it to us now, and then one day in the future it will be bread, we think, if we feel like supporting it.
Yeah.
Couple of the most recent entries in that genre have been The Avengers and Cyberpunk 2077, for very different reasons. A couple of years back, I actually did a whole video where I basically said, stop selling us your beta. I got very upset, mostly at, like, the Fallout 76s of the world. And
like Fallout 76.
Like the Fallout 76. That one, and I think at the time, too, other examples I was giving were, like, well, No Man's Sky, of course, we'll talk about that in a second. But then also a little game called Anthem, which was from a little company called BioWare, which usually has a pretty good pedigree. In fact, most of these companies have a pretty good pedigree, where they sell you a game that is a game. It is game out of the game. And there's a lot of people that will bemoan like early access titles for releasing before they're done. But what about all the giant titles that are coming out at full price from giant studios that have the resources to make a full game when they release?
Yeah.
What about them? So that's what this soapbox is going to be about. And mostly it is going to be a call. Game companies, you gotta finish a game before you release it. And I'm gonna try to do it in a way that explains to you why it's actually in your best interest to do that. And we can use those games as examples. We can. We can show you that, like, Bethesda coming in to Fallout 76 was coming in with a lot of cred in the gaming community. Yes, they had bugs. We all know that the games did have some bugs. But
some bugs. All of the bugs at launch.
All of the bugs. Sometimes you fought the bugs, but a lot of them were unintentional. But they came in with a lot of respect from the gaming community because they made very big, open, epic RPGs that had a lot of content, and people got immersed in them. They did have a lot of that going on. 76 dropped, and they said, well, we're going to make it an online game. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to change the format a bit, but we're also going to not, at least when they release the game, have things like NPCs or dialogue.
Yeah, that in itself is weird for an online game. It's like, no, we want the players to build the story in this game. And it's like,
oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah, what are you doing here, guys? More importantly, I mean, because I played 76 when it first came out, I did get a chance to play it a bit. And I can tell you that it's just a very weird experience. Any kind of interactions you have with the society when you get out there are mostly through audio logs. You're just listening to a computer talk to you. The only characters that they even started to build in were essentially like robots that you might encounter.
Right.
But with very limited dialogue tree. You're not really making decisions. You're not role-playing. You're just kind of in this world. They had other problems, obviously. I didn't like how they did VATS and all of that. It kind of took away from all those aspects. But The problem was, they released a game that you could tell was supposed to have a lot more content and should have had a lot more QC, but they still released it anyway, and it got terrible press. There was all of this stuff where, like, trying to... You'd be walking past people because now you gotta play with other people. Totally what I wanted to do in a Fallout game. And they, you couldn't mute mics, so you're listening to the background music, conversations of other people as passing by. It's like, I don't want to hear this.
See, I understand how that can be effective as immersion, but only in a game that people are immersed in as their characters.
Right.
And role-play in character, for instance. So if you have your mics always live and unable to be muted can't talk. If you have your mics unable to be muted in an MMO, and people are just talking or yelling or screaming or whatever at other people or just in general, it's like, I don't want to hear any of that. I don't want to hear other people talk. I don't want to be on a microphone myself in another game. And if I have the option to turn it off, I either do, or I just mute my own microphone, and then, whatever. But it's like, I don't want any of that. I don't want to use voice chat just randomly. I'm not someone who enjoys that.
Yeah, it's just a really jarring feeling, though, when you start hearing, like, a random conversation, and it turns out that there was just there was another player that was just around, and on their microphone, you can hear a conversation like they're having with their mom, or some other person in their room, and it's just all over the thing. That kind of breaks immersion anyway.
Yeah. If it was all in character, I'd be like, wow, that's actually really kind of cool, because it's kind of like when you walk up to someone in Fallout 4 and Skyrim, you sneak up towards them and you can kind of hear them having their own conversation because they exist in the world. And I get that aspect, but it doesn't work so well when the people having the conversations are real humans.
Right. They started...
That's a totally different gaming experience.
Right. And they even had this point where the NPCs and not having settlements and not having other characters in the game, because all of the players were supposed to be those characters, they had this whole thing where, again, players trying to make up for the mistakes of the developers would, like, role-play NPCs in various games to, like pretend to give people quests, because Bethesda hadn't done that out of the gate. Now, of course, what ends up going along with that is the roadmap of content. Because we didn't give you the content at the beginning, so now we are going to give you the roadmap that shows you the content that we will eventually put into the game, we think. We hope. Yes.
We hope.
And inevitably what happens is everyone's like, oh, well, one day maybe they'll put in, like, NPCs into the game. And then the first thing that they decide to release is the Battle Royale mode.
Yeah.
Because that's what people wanted from Fallout.
That's exactly what we wanted in Fallout 77,000.
Need more Fortnite. So, and now see, eventually they did actually do NPCs, they did colonies, they put in the Brotherhood of Steel, even though technically they wouldn't have been in that part of Virginia at that time frame. Anyway, the point is, they retconned all the lore. The Brotherhood ends up there, a bunch of settlements end up there, and they even have instances that are just private for you, where you go in and actually interact with certain characters and make decisions about the relationships you want to form with them. But that took the better part of a year. In that time, they had lost all credibility with the fan base. The sales did not skyrocket. There were people looking for refunds. Refund
gate.
Yeah. And eventually, to this day, they've been able to improve the game. They had to still go in and make the game, do that roadmap of content, continue to do the Wild Appalachia expansions and all of that. But if you have Game Pass, it's now free. It's free on your Game Pass. It's just part of it. If you were to buy it, I don't remember the price right now, but it is vastly discounted from like 2018. This is not even that long ago. From what was supposed to be a $60 release.
It is currently $40 on Steam.
It is currently $40 on Steam. Okay.
I forget, was it free to play afterwards you bought it? Like, there wasn't a subscription, was there?
Well, there was Fallout First, if you remember that.
There was a pay-to-win subs.
Yeah, well, there was, like, the cooler so that you're... if you had Fallout First, there was, like, special armor that you might get, what was it, the Mojave Ranger armor. There was the cooler where your food wouldn't degrade, so that's kind of helpful. But it was also, if you wanted to do the private servers, which again, I submit, really should have been a thing out of the gate that they offered when the game released. They then sectioned that off to make Fallout First a $100 a year subscription or something like that.
It's way too much.
It's way too much. And then, just to add insult to injury, because of course they didn't test that, people who were getting it, their stashes were like glitched out and they lost all their stuff. So we couldn't even get the subscription service working correctly.
Right.
Instead of doing the smart thing and just producing a game out of the gate that people wanted to play, that had the stuff in it, and that would have been great. It probably would have taken another year before they released. And I'm sure that the investors are the reason why they are pressured to release in this fashion. But I can't imagine that they were happy with the outcome, seeing the bad press, the reduced sales, and eventually having to sell the game at a much lower price point.
Yeah.
When we get into it. Anthem, another great example. You had BioWare, one of the shining gems leading up to this, of the gaming industry. Their RPGs were, like, bar none. KOTOR, Jade Empire, Mass Effect, they were the golden child of gaming. And then they made Anthem. Or they didn't make Anthem. They made, like, a second-rate Destiny clone, where you got in Iron Man suits, and it didn't work. And the only thing that kept people coming back was the idea that they had the roadmap of content again.
Right.
And we're going to have the Cataclysm, if you remember that.
Yeah, and now they've just kind of abandoned it because...
Oh, yeah.
They're like... I was listening to something, they're like, yeah, they're basically need to redo the entire game if they want people to play it.
Yeah. There was a time where they were saying that there were certain places... these long, sloggy missions where you had to go to different crypts that were actually going to be time-locked, so you couldn't just go and do all of them. You had to wait like a day to go and do the next part of the quest so that you didn't finish things too quickly.
Yeah.
Luckily, they didn't do that. But they got to the Cataclysm where they had the pre-rendered cutscene of, like, look, the storms come in, and it's like... and then they actually showed it, and it's like, well, there's a trickle of rain, so there's that. And what it did is, like, when people saw that, they were like, oh, this is the big event, and it's underwhelming. And and I think that speaks to that whole point. We paid for a full release game. You paid full price for a game that was supposed to be, like in the olden days, where you would pay for a game and it was a game. Now you're paying for a game that you hope will be a game in the future. Like in 2-3 years, it will be a game you would actually want to play. And this is the new model. But the reason why game companies, I'm trying to explain this to you, it is not a working strategy, is that I do not imagine that your investors are very happy with what it does to your stocks, what it does to your fan base, and what it does to residual sales down the line.
Yeah.
Because eventually, and we've seen it with Cyberpunk more recently too, is that there were a lot of bugs, there were a lot of glitches, it got a lot of bad press. After they said we were trying to polish it up, we're a year in afterward, and they've been getting some better press, but mostly because they were selling it for half price on Black Friday. So they got a huge, like, it was the top-selling game on Black Friday. But it's half price, and it was just out last year, after 8 years in development.
Yeah.
That's gotta cut into your margin.
So, I mean, yeah, definitely, it's one of those things. So I have a game on my Steam library
Mm.
that officially released in 2018.
Mm.
I've had in my library since at least 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And it spent, I think, 7 years as an early release.
Sure.
And that game is DayZ, which still has a $45 price tag on Steam right now.
And still doesn't feel finished.
I haven't played it since 2015.
Yeah.
So it could have gotten better, but it was
Oh, yeah.
pretty terrible
Yeah, it was.
back when I played.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm hoping it got better, but also 7 years
Sure.
as an early release is far too long.
Oh, yeah. And the cautionary tales, they keep it coming. We were talking about, before we started recording, about No Man's Sky. And, the thing about it is that, to their credit, Hello Games did improve that title. If you look at No Man's Sky today, it is far more vast in the amount of content that it provides.
Oh, yeah.
But they had to do that for their own survival.
Well, I mean, they were also getting, sued.
They were in trouble. They were in serious trouble. There was talk, I remember this, right after it launched, where the question was, how easy will it be to get a refund
Yeah.
for your No Man's Sky?
No Man's Sky was a Kickstarted game, right?
I believe so. Yes.
And then they had all that money, and the game they launched with, people were furious about. They're like, this is not... I know there were a bunch of...
Yeah.
Yeah, there were, I know, a bunch of lawsuits aimed right at them for that.
Yeah.
So, it's either you fix your game and you make it a game,
Mm-hmm.
or you get slapped with a ton of, even if frivolous, but
still, it's a
mostly
lot
not.
you have to go through.
Yeah.
That, and also just a lot of people that are returning the game. It's bad when you're looking at possible negative sales, of just more people returning it than wanting it. But yeah, and then they had to go down for a year. They had to hunker down for a whole year. At which point they're not really making more money on the game. They're just trying to fix the game they've already sold people.
Yeah.
So that they can come back with the next expansion.
Yeah.
Where they do provide a lot more content, but again, that can't look good. I mean, I'm not a businessman, so to speak. I don't run a business, but I don't imagine that selling people product and then trying to fix it over the course of a year is very good for your bottom line. I don't think that's how they typically do it. And they're still working on trying to make the game better now that we're 3 years in. And
Yeah.
it again, for small companies like that, that could have been a death knell. They kind of had to fix it, like you were saying, out of obligation. If they didn't, that would have been real bad. After the investment that they had into it. And then the other one that I mentioned recently, mostly because we keep wondering exactly how much it is going to be supported into the future, is Avengers. I have actually played some of Avengers. In topics of games you didn't think I would play. But I have played some of the Avengers. I mostly did because I had no interest in actually playing with the loot box system or the microtransactions or anything. I just wanted to play it to see what the base game is. And it's from, again, another great game company, Crystal Dynamics.
Is it really?
Crystal Dynamics made the Avengers.
Wow.
Yeah. That company.
Doesn't Square Enix own Crystal Dynamics?
They do.
So
there is that. But usually Square is fairly good. Depends on the title. But Crystal Dynamics had always performed for them. I think that they kind of got stuck with a project that was also in IP hell, to their credit. Because they didn't have license to the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, so they couldn't use the actual likenesses of the characters or anything but also, when I was playing it, I was thinking to myself, and this is, again, a year in, so it's had time to improve and there aren't as many bugs. You could tell that, like, there was an interesting idea there. I mean, it's still kind of Destiny, but with superheroes. But
Yeah.
but when you get to the, like, running action sequences where it feels like Ms. Marvel is practically doing the Lara Croft Survivor series, like, platforming segments and stuff, and when, you know, you're going around these different worlds, you start to feel like there was something there, but the support for it just wasn't really as high as people were hoping. And their talk about, like, this won't have any kind of microtransactions when it originally came out. Again, you are betting on an unknown if you bought at the start of this, because they very much did. They decided that people were leveling up too quickly, and it was confusing people how fast they leveled up, so they nerfed the leveling, and then they added in a booster to boost your experience. So you could get more experience if you bought the booster. At which point your argument about, like, the experience is confusing people unless you're willing to pay, and then it's not apparently confusing anymore. We created a problem and then we sold you the solution. That whole thing.
All right then.
Yeah. But you were kind of relying on them to be able to deliver on the roadmap of content that they were going to provide. All the way up to the most recent one, which was Spider-Man, but only for the PS5, because it's not on other systems, because Spider-Man's Sony exclusive. And people kind of wondering why it wasn't as feature-rich, or have, like, as many of the cutscenes, or the voice acting, or anything. And the answer they got back was, well, we were looking to work on content that all platforms are going to enjoy. So it still kind of feels like, yeah, but I mean, you could have still worked on that a little bit, and you could have still done that. So you're kind of trading on this idea that you're going to hope that the game studio provides you with the game down the line that you're paying full price for right this minute.
Yeah.
And they're conditioning a whole generation of gamers, both the old hats and the new ones, to not be that driven to buy something when it first comes out.
I'm okay with that. I usually don't.
Right. One of the things, too, is that even though we might not always look at games media, people do care what the reviews are. People will look at the reviews for games and say, oh, okay, that doesn't sound very good, or that does sound okay. And if you're creating a first impressions game that doesn't have all of the content, the reviewers are going to see that. They're not going to see the game in 3 years. They're not necessarily going to go back and review it then. They're seeing it before sometimes it even hits store shelves. If you're not providing a full game and just saying, oh no, don't worry about the bugs, we'll do that in a day one patch, good luck. Good luck convincing them of that. Because you're trading on confidence. And that's the thing that really disturbed me, is that companies like Crystal Dynamics or BioWare or CD Projekt Red that have great reputations going into these titles capitalize on that. So that you go out and say, well, you know, it's gonna be good, it's from these folks. And then they can kind of use that as an excuse to say, no, it will be good in the future. And sometimes it is, sometimes it is not, but you've already bought the game. And so from both a consumerist standpoint, the customer themselves, and from the standpoint of the people making the games, I do not see this being a long-term framework for game releasing. I just don't. Have you had any before I get off my rant, I'm gonna let you rant for a second. Besides DayZ, were there any other examples of ones that you encountered where it felt like the game was absolutely unfinished from, like, a big studio that you were unhappy about?
I mean, there's definitely been games I've bought and then returned like
Mhm.
immediately. I don't remember those games because I returned them, but I've definitely had a few where I've like got it because it sounded interesting.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that I expected. It didn't play in a way I enjoyed, and I was just like, well, I guess I'm gonna return this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've had a bunch of those.
Because I don't usually return games. I usually just try to not buy them unless I really feel comfortable with the price and have a good...
I do when they're that bad.
Right. There have been one or two times I did return games, but it was mostly because I realized I had already bought it on a different system. I just recently, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, I was like, oh, it's on sale for $10, and I bought it on GOG, and then I was like, wait a second, and I looked, and I was like, oh, I already bought this on Steam. You know what? I'm gonna return it, just, I already own it. And they were like, no, that's cool. We understand. But besides that, no, a lot of times I'll either wait for them to, and this is what they've usually talked about, is that it will either go on deep sale quickly when that kind of stuff happens because they've gotten negative press and they need to recoup, or it will become a free-to-play game.
Yeah.
And at that point, just pick it up then. I've seen enough examples where that could happen. But if you're telling me, the basic point that I want to hit on is if you're telling me that the game will eventually like have all the game in it in like 3 years time, 2 years, 3 years time, I don't see why I wouldn't just wait to buy it in 3 years when all of that content is there and the price has dropped to a third.
Right.
I just don't see the economy of that there. I think when, like, EA, for all of its flaws and problems, released, like, Jedi Fallen Order and said, well, we're not really doing roadmaps of content or anything, Respawn just made the game. They just made the game. It's a single-player game. It's no loot boxes. It's nothing like that. The game's the game out of the gate. And they sold people that. It did banner numbers because people were so happy to actually buy a game that is the whole game out of the gate. And I can tell you that I have played it, and I think it was good. It was fine. Maybe not incredible, but I understand one of the reasons why it probably got an overt positive reaction was because it is now a refreshing idea that the game would be complete out of the gate, which is kind of sad.
Crazy.
It's terrifying, actually.
Yeah.
I feel bad for it, but yeah. So anyway, the soapbox this week. Game companies, stop trying to sell me a beta as a full game. It's not working. No one's buying it.
Except for the people who are buying it.
Yeah, but then they can return it. Then they can return it. Okay. So we move from that, segue very nicely to a similar topic in games you didn't think that we'd play. And we're going to talk a little bit about early access games that we did play. Wow.
Yeah, he just rants about how you don't want to be sold games that aren't done unless they're early access prices,
well,
and not full prices.
And I think that that's important to note too, because a lot of early access games, the ones that we're mostly going to be talking about here, are from smaller studios. They don't necessarily come from the large corporations. They're ambitious titles, to say the least, but usually come from smaller teams that need to get their games out there so that they can fund the continued development of it. You can usually see a lot of passion involved with them, at least in my experience. At least the better examples of it. There are some that suck, but you can see the development in there, that they had a passion project, they wanted to put it out there, and when they get developed, that's great. I will say that I usually will not buy an early access game unless I already like the product the way it is. There are some I could easily name that I was not big on. I tried The Long Dark. I wasn't big on it. I'm not gonna lie. I get the concept. It's not like any other game, which is good. But I didn't like kind of the linear, stuck in a tundra survival. Hope the wolves don't eat you.
What if they do?
Well, what happened to me in The Long Dark, I was actually playing the demo version, but it was in early access at the time, is that a pack of wolves were tracking me down, and I was at very low health, and there was a car. And so I was like, well, let me get into the car so that the wolves can't get me. But now I'm in a car, and it's nighttime, and it's freezing, and I'm getting very cold, and the wolves are right outside my door, so I can't get out there. And I think to myself, well, maybe I just get my torch out. And I think what happened was I set the car on fire when I put the torch on, and I burned in the car. And it was around that point that I think the demo ended, and they were like, would you like to buy the full game? It's like, no. No, I don't think I would like to do that.
Like, do I want to relive burning myself alive in a car again?
Do I want to explode in the car again? Nope. I'm not really surrounded by wolves. But we have played some early access games that were good and that were actually worth your time and money. And Alex, allegedly, Alex, do you have an example that you could start us off with?
Yeah, I've got at least one example here that I've got almost 90 hours into.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, of all things.
Oh, yes.
It's still in early access. The devs are constantly updating. Like the last update here. The last patch notes are from October. And that's the last big patch. And then hot fixes, again, the last one was November 24th. But it's constantly being updated and worked on, and the community has lots of support for it. And I think the community for Mountain Blade in general has tons of support from users and the team behind it. And there's tons of mods also for things that people want to see done in game to make it work a little better or a little differently. And then they will also oftentimes look at those mods and see what people enjoy and throw some of those in the base game. I don't know if you've played Bannerlord.
I played some of the original Mountain Blade. I
didn't.
Okay, that's probably for the best. I wasn't big on it. I don't know how similar the sequel is, but
Bannerlord's I like the idea behind it, and I enjoy a lot of what you can do in it. I think the biggest hang up I have for me is that early game, like if you're not like there's not any specific like stuff telling you what to do, where to go. It's kind of like you can kind of do your own thing. There's a main story for it, and you can follow that, but you have to kind of find your own way to get there, kind of deal.
Okay.
It's the Fallout 4 and Skyrim of strategy games.
Yeah.
Where you go, all right, here's kind of the quests you're on, but you don't have to go to it right away, and there's no set path on how you get there and all that stuff.
Right. And my experience with the original was similar to that. I think I just kind of felt a futility when I was playing it that I kind of got tired of. But there was a few places where you'd go to a town and you'd be wandering around different parts of it, and they would say, "Oh, you've been ambushed by a bunch of bandits." And now, like, anybody in my crew, they aren't there, so now it's just me, and I have to deal with the bandits. And if I don't, well, that sucks for me. I'm gonna get, like, kidnapped and dragged into the middle of the desert and hopefully escape with whoever's left in my party.
Right.
There was that, and then the other thing that really annoyed me was eventually I just kind of like went completely off script, and I was like, nah, throw caution to the wind. I get to a town. The town needs me to raise up an army, a peasant army, because there's some thugs, and we need to stop the thugs from coming in. So I spend the next few days training the soldiers and, going through that motion so that we can raise that peasant army. And we do. And like on the 5th day, 6th day, whatever, the bandits come. The bandits kill everybody in town immediately. I'm the only one left, and there's like 6 bandits that are still there. They come, they skewer me all over the place, and then it says, "Yeah, you lost the town. Sucks, huh?" Pretty much is what they give me, and it's like, okay, well, that's the end of this title for me. I'm not playing this. I just spent like 5-6 days in this thing trying to raise the army and fight and everything, and then it's like, oh yeah, that didn't work out, and the town is raised and you can't come back here anymore.
Yeah.
I'm hoping Bannerlord solved those problems.
I mean, you can still get quests for that, like, oh, train these troops for us, and it's kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
To do that, honestly, because like the only way to really do it effectively is to basically like take only those troops instead of your normal troops.
Yeah.
But then it's like, all right, but they suck.
Yeah.
So like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fun. I go back from it from time to time to play. Because I do enjoy it, and I enjoy the combat. I enjoy having an army that I can kind of like tell what to do, or leading it on the front lines essentially is fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy that, or you can auto-resolve if you want to as well.
It is a kick in the teeth, though, like when you get your specialty soldiers and you get, you're able to get a little bit of an army together, and then just a random group of bandits come by and just kill everybody in your party.
My issue was that...
Or peasants.
Yeah, no. I haven't really had that big of an issue with that so much.
Okay.
The bandits and the looters and stuff tend to be lower levels, so once you have an army that's kind of knowing what they're doing, you don't lose too many people. As long as you're commanding them well, or you outnumber them and don't go in way over your head. But what was I saying? Fuck.
You haven't experienced the problem with your army getting blasted out of the water by...
Oh, I mean, I definitely have.
As much, though.
But not as much. So that's fun. But then you can take the prisoners and take all their goods and sell everything.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I can give you a couple examples too. Actually, one of the ones that was the first, I think, early access game that I actually bought was Subnautica. And actually, that ends up working out well, because I think when it was on early access, it was like $20, and to buy it now, I think it's actually more as a full release game. But Subnautica, surprisingly enough, even though I hate underwater combat, was so atmospheric, and what they were trying to do, you could tell that there were some technical limitations, some glitches and stuff like that. But the thing is that out of the gate, when I bought it, I felt like there was plenty of content there for what they were asking for. I did not feel like I was betting on the future. I was assuming what it had now, that maybe there would be nothing more. Now, I haven't actually gone back to Subnautica in a couple years, since I initially played it, but I have heard about vast new quantities of content, land areas that they have put in, the ships that you can actually explore before they sink into the sea, like a lot of additional stuff, and that's great. It would actually make me want to go back and play a little bit more, but I think it was just the fact that it was so atmospheric from the start, and really, like, I'll try Sub-Zero at some point. I'll play Sub-Zero, or Below Zero, I think is what it's called. Subnautica Below Zero.
Yeah, I think it's Below Zero.
I'll play that at some point, because I like what they were doing to kind of like expand the lore of that. But it's just kind of hard not to love just the immersive quality to it, and essentially, truth be told, a game that kind of spawned a lot of other imitators that wanted to be it in the future. I played one, and I'm never going to remember the name of it. Breathage. Yeah, that's right. Breathage. I did play that, and it's kind of quirky, and it's in space and everything, and you can tell it's kind of trying to be Subnautica, but it's not gonna be Subnautica. Like, you can tell that there are games that are influenced by it. for a studio that, if I remember correctly, is only like 8 or 10 people that made that. And it's not procedurally generated. Those are like fully, rendered environments that are all very different. That has a very long, lengthy quest line that you can go on, and additional content that was done right up until its release. So, I did appreciate that.
Yeah.
Do you have another?
Let's see. I know one you mentioned was Craftopia.
Yes.
Which is that one you haven't picked up?
I did play it a bit.
Okay.
It was on Game Pass, so I did play it a little bit to see what it was.
I thought the premise was really interesting. It's trying to be a lot of things.
Oh, I think that was the one big thing problem I had with Craftopia, was like, I have no idea what game you want to be.
Yeah, it's
You want to be every game.
like it looks and feels and plays like it wants to be Breath of the Wild, but then it's got all these crafting mechanics and base building and stuff.
It's got dungeons. It's got
dungeons.
It's got lots of combat and harvesting mechanics and you can do everything.
And then it's got conveyor belts and factories in it.
And a little Minecraft thrown in there.
Yeah, it's a really weird, but it is fun.
It's something else. Yeah.
It's definitely something else. Ray and I have played a bunch of Craftopia.
Yeah.
We started playing that together. I think when we started dating, we were playing it together.
Mm.
And we haven't gone back to it in a while, and we've been meaning to, but we have a lot of other games we like to play too. And my game list just keeps growing. So, it's really fun as a crafting, cooking, combat, base building thing. But it is one of those. Yeah. It doesn't niche down into one. It's just broad. The art style is decent. It's really cool, and I guess there are ways you can actually get like custom models in there if you want to. And lots of ridiculousness.
Oh yeah.
Lots and lots of ridiculousness.
Oh sure. Yeah.
Like animal breeding.
Oh yes, that's right. There's animal breeding in there too.
Yeah, you can just
breed
lots of animals. You can go fishing.
Oh yeah.
Looking at my screenshots.
That's in Skyrim now too.
Yeah, that's in Skyrim. You can do weird things. There's vehicles, like you can build motorcycles in Craftopia as well, and it's like, what?
Oh yeah.
One of the things I don't like, and I think they've patched it a little bit, I do keep up with the patch notes, is that weapon durability, for instance, was a pain. I think they reduced the rate at which they degraded, at least. And they've added some stuff in so you can repair them better, but it was like, this is annoying.
Yeah, it really was. I noticed that too. Like, stuff breaks so quickly on you to an unrealistic degree. I think that degrading weapons is just such an odd thing in games because it's unrealistically fast when you consider how fast weapons in real life would degrade.
I mean, yeah, I don't think...
If you do basic maintenance on guns, or you just regular honing, or just use a whetstone once in a while on a blade, it's not gonna, like, break down on you after you fire this many bullets or swing the sword this many times.
Right.
I think in Dark Souls, they technically... If I remember correctly, someone was talking to me, I never really paid that much attention. But in, like, the Dark Souls series, they'll make a note that, yeah, your weapon degrades, but it's very slow, because it's not supposed to be quick. It's not supposed to be a quick thing. There was another one. I actually have 3, but the second one I wanted to talk to you about was Grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that actually did come from Obsidian. I think it's one of the smaller teams in Obsidian, but they did release it as an early access game, and it did come to Game Pass, like, the first day. I did get to play it when it originally came out. I was just kind of fascinated with this very interesting concept. of having a survival game, but basically in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Right.
It looks great, and I was really impressed that, like, this is supposed to be an early access game, and a lot of people were like, boy, it feels like it's pretty, detailed, it's fleshed out, even though it was an early access game. The problem, of course, was that you could probably complete the actual story quest up to the point that it was released, that it had when it was released, in about 15 minutes if you knew what you were doing, because they had not really developed much except, like, learn how to craft stuff and make your houses and stuff, and then make a journey to the tree and find the little robot dude that will tell you there's more content to come. Since that point, though, and I haven't really played it again since that original release, they have released a ton of stuff. There's, like, birds, there's koi fish in the ponds, there's, like, a whole bunch of new content that they've expanded, additional armor and gadgets and tons of new stuff, but that really was from more of a large studio, not like a small indie dev company.
Yeah.
And the idea that you can play with, like, up to 4 people, that's fun. You could all just be the kids trying to figure out what you're going to do with the ladybugs that walk, or the evil spiders, because those spiders are horrifying.
You know what I want to see in a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids / Grounded type thing is I want to see someone mow the lawn sometime.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's got to be an expansion if they haven't already done it. The birds and the fish are terrifying enough, but
and then you just hear that.
Yeah.
And it starts getting louder, and you have to evade this giant lawnmower.
The one nice thing is that if you can, like, hide from the lawnmower, and the lawnmower goes over you, if the grass blades were then on the ground, and you could pick them all up so you could use them.
Oh my god.
Because grass is, like, one of the big crafting materials in that game.
Oh yeah.
You chop down the grass and you could use it. So that would be fun. Or terrifying. Or people just walking through the yard and you could get stepped on.
A dog or a cat.
Yep.
Yeah.
That'd be.
I mean, especially a cat, because they'd be like, ooh, something to play with.
Oh yeah, something to play with. There could be a whole, like, sub-level where you're inside the cat's stomach and you have to get out.
Jonah.
No.
Jonah, where's the whale?
That's probably the fish in the pond. That would be fun. Did you have a third that you can cite?
Not that I can think. Actually, yes, I do. I do have a third. It is Satisfactory.
It is Satisfactory. Okay.
It is Satisfactory.
Okay.
I have put. I don't know how many hours it's on Epic. I'd have to open up Epic. Is Epic launched? Right. Can I open up Epic really quick? I can't. Give me 1 second.
Satisfactory, you can just make the weirdest factory conveyor belt line imaginable.
Yeah. I got into that from watching Let's Game It Out.
Sure.
Because he's done a ton of Satisfactory videos that are just fantastic and ridiculous. It's one of those games where, you can play it however you really want to. It's all about building a factory, and then just your goal is to build a bigger factory and optimize it, potentially.
Yeah.
You don't have to optimize it. You can be very unoptimized. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You can build conveyor belt NATOs. And then wrap those conveyor belt NATOs in pipeline tornadoes.
Fun.
Like Josh did.
Nice.
I have allegedly 5 days of time in Satisfactory.
Oh, so like 125 hours or so.
Yeah. And to be fair,
good.
Some of that time is spent with the game running without me playing. Because then you can be like, all right, well, I need some of this stuff, and wow, my power supply isn't going to go out at all because this is all automated, so I'm going to go to bed and have fun playing in the background game.
Right. I do have a few that are on my time cards that say that I've played for like 150 hours, and honestly, I've probably played for 5. Because what happens is, like, I'll be playing the game, and I'll just I'll just put my system to sleep, but the game's still technically open,
Yeah.
until I come back 2 days later, and,
Right.
and it's like, wow, you've been playing for 50 hours. Nope, I've been playing for 2, but I'll take the time in, if you want to say that. Been idle that whole time. I haven't gotten very far in 50 hours. Uh, how many conveyor belts have you put up in Satisfactory?
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
Everything's got conveyor belts. I don't build them crazy, like, I don't build conveyor belt weaves.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one.
No, I didn't.
You know, like, a cross weave?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that.
Of conveyor belts.
Perfect.
It's impressive.
Oh, yeah.
It took them like 7 hours to build it or something.
And
It's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. It's
But
unnecessary.
it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, he has that as a legacy. Just a cross weave of...
Yeah, is there a limit is his legacy.
Yes.
And it's a great legacy.
It is.
So, TLDR, we watched him do some stream yesterday, because he does Twitch.
Yep.
And it was for Farming Simulator 2022.
Oh, God.
And 2 hours into the stream, he still hadn't gotten into the game properly.
Yeah. Well, because if you get into the game properly, it's Farming Sim 2020.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But like, it was trying to get the game set up, and he was playing with someone else who was streaming, and they were trying to get it, and it wouldn't work. And so I came back later on, 5 hours later. They were still playing, and they, boy, he had $2.8 million
Yeah.
by opening farms, taking out loans, and then closing those farms after giving the money to his first farm, and then closing those farms. So he's like, yeah, I can buy whatever I want for these vehicles. I just keep buying vehicles, building new farms, and selling them.
Yeah.
Taking out loans, giving out all the money to my other farm.
Whatever works.
So, you know, within 2 hours, within like 2 hours of playing the game, we found a way to exploit for lots of money.
Perfect.
Yeah. So if you want to ever play Farming Sim 22, infinite money is really easy to get.
That's good. The reason I never played the Farming Sim series is because it felt like if you took Stardew Valley but took out all the whimsy and character development.
Oh, okay. So if you played Stardew Valley, but better.
No,
Because I was not a fan of Stardew Valley.
you were not a fan of Stardew Valley.
Or Terraria.
We can't talk anymore. I didn't care that much about Terraria.
End of the show. Bye.
End of the show. One of my favorite games of all time, Stardew Valley. I'm looking forward to what is it? Ghost Chocolatier? Spear Chocolatier? It's the new one. It's good. It's a good game.
Doubt it.
Anyway, my last one though that I wanted to mention is one that I actually recently played, and we played it on stream, and that was Everspace 2. Technically, it is. Oh yes.
I thought you were going to say Deer Simulator.
No, actually, that's a full release game. Apparently, that's done. That's done. They don't need to improve that at all. But Everspace 2 is technically an early access game. They are still working on it. You can tell in several places when you get into the menus as well that there are placeholders for more levels that they just have not introduced. Right now, you can go up to like level 20. You can tell that it's built so that you could do like 30 in terms of like the overall framework. And there are a lot of systems that they haven't opened up. But, and you did see me play this on air, it feels like a pretty polished game experience out of the gate. It's a very satisfying one, being able to go to all of these systems, go around these different solar systems, and you know, even to actual bases, some that look like cities out of Blade Runner, some of them that are actually on ground bases going into the tunnel systems of planets, and it all feels very, complete out of the gate. It's just that you can tell that the storyline isn't done, and that there are caps that it was not supposed to have. I have seen some of the updates that they've done where the different ships aren't just like bombers or fighters, but they actually have specific names now attached to them. and there's eventually going to be customization for the different parts on it because it's all kind of randomly generated right now. But great dogfighting. It will probably end up being close to the top in terms of my best to worst 2021 list. Because one, haven't played as many games from this year, but also it was very impressive outing for the studio, and I'm liking where they're going with it. But you can play it right now out of the gate, and I would not discourage you from it because it's good right now. It's good now. Anything they do past that is even better. So there is that. You know what I am surprised by that you did not mention, though, is that you did not mention Elite Dangerous.
That's not early access.
It was originally, though.
I don't think when I got it.
Maybe not when you got it, but once upon a time, though.
Yeah.
It was actually...
back in 2015 is when it released. So it's been out for almost 7 years.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I don't think I had it way back then, though.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. But I do remember that I think when I originally got a chance to play it as a demo, it was in early access at that time.
Maybe. It's gotten better.
Yeah. I mean, it's still way too complicated for me. But,
I still love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. It is one of the largest game worlds in video gaming.
Yeah.
It is only, I believe, surpassed by No Man's Sky.
Well, that's because No Man's Sky doesn't take place in our universe since it's procedurally generated.
Right.
No Man's Sky is, I believe, infinite.
It is trillions of galaxies, something like that.
And Elite Dangerous is large number but finite.
Large number, but it's finite. Yeah. But I think that when they actually looked at scale, Elite Dangerous is the second largest game environment there is on the market. So
it's pretty big.
Yeah. And frankly, if that was the largest, I think that we'd be fine. We would never need anything larger. You can't do everything.
Still looking for a space trucker crew to game with.
Yeah. Well, you'll get that convoy one day.
Probably not.
Gotta roll up there, good buddy. Sorry.
Here's a rubber duck.
Now I gotta find a rubber duck to put over your face in this next part. That'd be great. Okay, and finally on the show today, we get to talk about... we forgot to talk about tabletop gaming.
We forgot to? Damn.
Forgot. Yeah, we got to make
roll
sure.
Roll for charisma to save your ass.
Yeah, roll for charisma to save your ass. It was super ineffective. My ass has not been saved. Make an ass save. That's
a different game.
That's a whole other game. That's a game we don't talk about.
That's a game, actually, TLDR. Again, I don't know, I keep saying TLDR. But that's a game that I recently saw being talked about places, and I'm like, why is this suddenly getting press again?
Oh no.
It was like, it might have been a Reddit, it might have been someone doing a YouTube video or something, but they're like, yeah, this game. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
That's a game that's a trope. That is a trope on so old that we don't talk about it because it's just that bad. Why are you suddenly being like, yeah, we're gonna cover this? But it had like thousands of views or whatever, thousands of upvotes or whatever, and I'm like, maybe we should have covered it.
Yeah. Who knows? If
anyone for anal circumference.
Okay, so if anybody knows what we're talking about and you want us to do something on it, you just let us know. Maybe we'll do a segment about it.
Yeah, that'll be like demonetized. If we were monetized on YouTube, that would be demonetized.
We wouldn't be anymore. But we're not talking about this. Although, kind of wish that the segment wasn't called Crit Think after we. But hey, it's fine. We're doing a Crit Think on this episode. And we're going to be talking about, can you have a diplomacy campaign? Now, I said that thinking that seems like a really unique thing. And then Alex, you were like, oh yeah, court intrigue.
Yeah, court intrigue.
Okay.
And he's like, oh.
Oh, is that something that they already do? Is that have you done anything like that in a game?
No. My games have never been that roleplay heavy.
Okay.
So I've never run one like that, and I've had some. I think David's game didn't have court intrigue, but it did have a good amount of roleplay, and it did have a bit of diplomacy that we are dealing with. Although it ended up that we just murdered the guy running the town. So I don't know.
See, I think this is where it breaks down for me. The whole idea of that. But what I'm really thinking about is like straight up a specifically diplomacy campaign. Like we're not doing the combat. Like imagine only skills that are related to like your social skills or your informational gathering ability, or your ability to subvert people or do the con game in a lot of ways, gathering information, like not with swords or have any of that kind of equipment, but like your weapons are like your legal paperwork and your treaties that you are putting in front of people. And
so here's the thing for me with that is that I think it's far more interesting to play a diplomatic game person to person than it is they play an RPG that would be diplomacy and intrigue themed, where you're playing versus the dungeon masters or the storytellers characters.
Okay.
Because then it comes down to dice rolls and skill points, as opposed to if you're playing like the actual game diplomacy, where you actually have to make deals and backstab your friends and do all the court intrigue, but for real, essentially.
Yeah.
Because you're playing against your friends, but you also have to do alliances and you have to do deals and trades. So it's a game of negotiation.
Oh, sure.
You're doing that with real people. So it suddenly becomes less of, all right, well, these are characters that the DM is playing, and these are your characters and what they want, and you have to roll for skill checks, and it becomes more of a, all right, well, I say I'm gonna do this, but I'm also gonna backstab you, and I'm not telling you that.
Right.
But then they're doing their deals on their end.
Okay.
So it becomes way more intricate on that end, because you've only got plans for what you're gonna do, and everyone else has their own plans, even if that involves you or involves backstabbing you. So to me, it's more interesting to do it that way. You can still do a good diplomacy campaign in like an RPG for sure. I just find it more fun to do diplomacy when everything is at stake. And you can my favorite line from playing diplomacy when backstabbing someone was, hell would have been preferable.
Very good, very good. Okay, but let's say I'm a masochist, and
You're a masochist.
Okay, I'm a masochist, and oh no, I need somebody in the court to give me a legal injunction or something like that. But I've determined that using the framework of like an actual RPG, where I have to make a lot of choices and roll for things, I am looking to play essentially like the diplomatic game, in order to win over hearts and minds or strike fear into my enemies. But in a way that doesn't necessarily involve the combat mechanics that we think of, or maybe a modified version of combat, So
you want to do social combat?
I'm thinking, yeah, like imagine a social combat in similar fashion to the way you might have seen it in a few different games, the social skills that they put into like Outer Worlds, where you can actually level up your social skills, but then there are actual things in combat that cause your enemies to be more afraid of you, or to get confused by your presence, depending on what you have leveled up in that particular game. So I'm thinking to myself, like, that might actually translate over. Like, you could have social skills that you actually use as your attacks in some ways against somebody else. In that respect, I've seen it also in like Thea the Awakening. That was a card-based game, obviously. But that one, there's many different ways to approach your combat, and one of them is through a social dialogue, and so characters with higher social skills will usually do better in those combats, even if they are not physically capable. But again, that is kind of like, you take this number, that number is good. I roll this number that says I have winning smile. I roll winning smile. Does that hit up against essentially their mental fortitude in some ways? Like, you'd have to restructure a lot of things, like hit points might not be hit points anymore. How you do rounds, might not be the same. But I mean, I could see where you could take the basic framework maybe and just revamp it so it's not so much like I hit something with a sword, but I hit something with my withering discontent at your opinion.
I'm just thinking of an RPG called The Quill and Barb.
Oh, fun. The Quill and
Then
Barb.
you use pen and paper, but it's that, and then insulting people with barbs.
Give me a little bit. I'm just recording.
This is why we can't have nice things. Leave that in the episode.
10. Let's say 15. Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll leave that. This is me using my social ability in the game.
Did you roll for it?
I did not have to roll for it.
No.
But anyway, sorry. I will pick it back up with you. What were you just saying before I got interrupted?
Quill and Barb.
Yes, the Quill and Barb. Very good idea. Do you want to play Barb or Quill?
No.
Okay. So imagine like we all sat down at a table, and then sitting down at a table, playing a role-playing game, we were playing characters that were sitting down at a table, playing a very different kind of game.
We're playing characters.
Yes, imagine that you are playing a game, but playing a much different kind of game to forge alliances, to determine where your armies are going to go. Almost the armchair warrior in some ways.
Yeah, strategist.
Yeah, you're doing the strategy game behind the scenes of what you would imagine is kind of like the on-ground, hit-the-ground running kind of campaign that most adventurers will do.
Yeah.
Imagine playing the people behind the scenes and doing that job. And also, what chaotic evil would look like in that regard.
Everyone's going everywhere. Divide and conquer.
Divide our own armies to conquer our own armies. Welcome to chaotic evil. What kind of modifications do you see that we might have to make in order to kind of like take the same structure of an RPG but apply it more to the social aspects?
Well, I mean, for that, for instance, you would, instead of taking a lot of your skills that are physically based in like D&D, you could probably swap out a bunch of those for more social skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You could still keep like intimidation, for instance, deception, but you'd want some other ones like mockery or appraisal. You could use that a different way. I mean, you can use skills in different ways than they're typically used for that, but you'd want to do more deduction and skills based on knowledge in those situations.
Right. I could also see where you might be able to utilize your skill. It just kind of like redefine what the skills are. Like, if you took the array from a Dungeons & Dragons, you take your strength and your endurance and your, dexterity, those sort of things. Those might have different connotations in a world where your goal is to convince people of things, your strength might actually help you with intimidation.
Yeah.
Or your resolve in some ways about like what position you're coming into things on. Endurance, again, being able to deal with people for long periods of time, being able to almost just outlast others in debates. I can see where those things. Dexterity actually might be very useful for like sleight of hand if you're looking to kind of play the cloak and dagger kind of aspect of it, sans the dagger.
No,
But
including the dagger.
you include the dagger. It's a letter opener now.
Yes.
It's a letter opener.
Proficient in letter openers.
Yeah, exactly. So you can do that. I can also see some of the skills also being very useful, but you just have to try to apply them to more of a social situation than anything else. I can see like history, those sort of things actually would be very useful if you understood the history of other people that were at that table.
Yeah.
You could definitely use those knowledge abilities as well. So, and stealth, actually stealth could even be very useful, especially if you do recon. That would be very good. But I think you could use the same framework, but you'd really have to start redefining what those things actually do in the context of it.
Right.
Yeah. If you were to GM something like this.
I wouldn't.
Okay.
That's how I would do that.
Yeah, I would not GM something like this. Okay. You can't imagine, like, if we said, like, let's take the Star Wars RPG, for instance, and we're going to roleplay the Senate. We're going to do the Senate scene.
I am the Senate.
You are the Senate. That's why
there we go.
That's why you're GMing. You're the storyteller in this situation. That's why you are the Senate. But so you're Palpatine as the GM.
Unlimited power.
Unlimited power. They have left me scarred. And then all of your players are like members of the Senate that are trying to like dethrone you.
They're just force lightning them all.
But
that's how that plays out.
In this context, the force lightning isn't there. You've been left scarred. You don't have the force lightning in this. Sorry. You don't have the force lightning at your disposal. You got to win this through other means. You gotta go in with a little bit more of a little bit more of the Senator, whatever his name was, and it was Palpatine. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Palpatine. Shmi? Sheed. Yeah. Okay. Little less Darth Sidious. You can't do the Darth Sidious thing. You have to do the Palpatine thing. So now you're Senator Palpatine, and you're going into this, and maybe you're GMing, and there's just your entire party is just Senator Palpatines. So obviously the Force powers aren't necessarily going to be as big a deal. No one's going to be using that, and we're just going to have Force lightning all over the place. But now they actually have to resort back to their actual skill working the political system that they're in the Republic. So, what is the main way that you approach that for your players?
As Palpatine?
As the person running the game for a whole host of Palpatines, your party is all Palpatines. It's Palpatines all the way down. That's all you have. You just have you have so many Palpatines. Too many Palpatines. That's all you got. And now you got to figure out a way to run this game because the Palpatines want to disband the Republic and start the Galactic Empire. That's their goal.
Well, then I start forming a resistance.
You start forming a resistance. Okay. Excellent. Okay. How in that scenario, though, do you want to utilize some of the skills that...
Oh, I have no idea.
No idea?
No idea.
Okay.
I'm drawing a blank.
You're drawing a complete blank? Maybe drawing a blank could actually be a benefit. You just have a blank piece of paper that you put up in front of people. That would confuse them.
Yeah.
In the Senate.
No, that I feel like a campaign like that is a lot more of setup.
Sure.
Then we did talk about this in our last episode. Like, My style is not high prep. Mine is fairly low prep.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
feel like that type of campaign is a lot higher prep.
Right.
Because then you need to know people's motives and desires and what they're trying to go for. And boy, do I not have mental energy for that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, for me, I think the problem that I would end up with is I'd want to actually write out an entire treatise of.
No,
like,
in that case it'd be fine, but you write it out on paper and then slide it across the table to your players.
Right. And now...
You don't monologue it.
No, I'm not going to monologue it, but I would say that there are certain things that are going to be... Actually, that would be an interesting idea. That if your players actually had certain pressure points of sorts, like things that they definitely need, or things that they care about more in terms of like what they're looking for from this.
That actually would work well.
Yeah, so now you're looking at those individual passages, like these individual paragraphs that might conflict with the different characters' goals, their ideals, and some that are going to be okay with it, some of them that are not, and then those paragraphs, as we're going through this, have to be deliberated over. They have to be talked about. You have to be able to convince somebody else of what that is. We might have to roll, we might have to apply pressure in another direction on them. It might have to make a negotiation of like, well, I can give you some credit for this thing that's going to be coming up.
Gonna get the high school debate team together for a game like that.
You got to get the high school debate team together for this. That would be absolutely great. So, but that would be very interesting because at the end of that game, you would have a revised treaty that you could show the players that they made together from that campaign that they were going through.
That'd be neat.
And you'd see how they evolved that.
All right, you run that campaign, and I'll derail it.
You'll watch. You'll be the Senate. You'll be Palpatine, standing there, kind of going, "When can I like nuclear Tatsuki this whole thing?
When can I force lightning?
When can I force lightning the entire Senate? That'd be great."
Rolling for force lightning.
So with that being said, we always pass a question on to you with Crit Thank, and I'm kind of wondering, how would this go if you had your high school debate team?
Or college debate team.
Yeah. How would this look if your debate team were involved? Or actually, were you in a debate team? I don't know. I wasn't.
I feel like most of us probably weren't. I feel like most people who were in debate teams probably went into politics.
That's true. Do you see a diplomacy campaign? Yeah, actually, I think the question I'd really like to ask is, do you need a certain group of people in order for a diplomacy campaign to work?
I think so. You
Okay.
need people who want to buy into that and really want that type of campaign. But we're asking you,
Yeah.
so you let us know.
And sans that, actually, probably the more interesting question I'm looking for answers for, I guess, would be, what mechanic would you like to see added to a diplomacy campaign?
Letter opener proficiencies.
That would be great. But I think that's probably the better question. I'm looking for what mechanic you'd like to add, because we didn't really talk about that on this episode.
Oh, sure. That's
But
fine.
We can do that. So please let us know. We're over on Discord. We are everywhere, it seems. You can also leave a message for us over on our Anchor page. So that will do it for this episode of, I believe that we're Total Pebble Knockdown, according to my lovely hoodie. 'Tis the season, folks.
Your strings are in the way. There you go. There you go.
There.
There you go. There you go.
This looks
Look at that
natural
hoodie.
and fun.
Yeah. Looks like a hangsman's noose.
That's what we
Hangman's noose?
definitely want our brand associated with.
Yes. Nooses.
Okay. In case anybody wants to find out about other strangulation risks, where could they go on the internet, Alex?
I don't know if you can hear that. Oh, you couldn't hear any of that? Alright. That was loud. So loud. That was the fucking trucks downstairs. Take that one from the top again, please.
Yeah, certainly. So if people wanted to know about any other choking hazards, where could they go?
Small pieces and Legos near you. You can find out more about choking hazards, not here, but you can find out more about what we do over at totalpebblenokdown.com.
You know, I'm starting to realize we need a whole Lego episode where we are just replaced with little Lego people.
No.
And we'll do Total Pebble Knockdown, the Lego Total Pebble Knockdown. That'd be great.
The movie.
Yeah, we'll do the Lego movie Total.
Do we need to do that from the top again?
Yes, we probably do. This would be fun for everybody.
Okay.
Okay. So, Alex, if they want to find Lego versions of... All right. Alex, if people were wondering where they could find more Total Pebble Knockdown, where could they go?
You can go to totalpebblenokdown.com.
That's right. And when you are over there, you will find a whole bunch of different projects that we work on. I won't talk to you about them now. You go there. It'll be a nice surprise for you. While you're there, though, there is a Patreon. We do full-length video versions of the podcast over there, exclusive as well. And those episodes go up before the podcast one, so worth checking out. Additionally, you can find us on every single podcast app known to man.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Anchor says we're listed on 7, and I know it's more than that.
Yep.
Because they don't have spots for more than that. But we are also on, like, Amazon Music now.
Yeah.
If you use that. And I think Audible. If anyone has Audible, like, let me know if we're there.
Sure. We're everywhere, folks. We're
Yeah.
everywhere you didn't know you wanted to be.
Just like MasterCard.
Yes, exactly. I don't think we're on MasterCard. Does MasterCard
We could
have...
get, they have custom printed MasterCards. We could be on someone's MasterCard.
Oh, that would be fun.
That'd be terrifying.
I don't think they have a podcast app, though. They
Yet.
could. Yet. In addition, though, you can also find us on social media, especially over on the Twitter. I believe that's how it's called. I am at Titanium.
I am at EXP Limited, and the show is at Pebble Knockdown.
So if you have any questions or suggestions for things that you might want to hear us talk about on the show, feel free to catch us over there, or of course on our Discord channel. That would also be great. Yeah.
Always looking to have new faces and
New voices.
screen names.
New screen names.
Screen names show up, and new voices to join us on our monthly live streams.
Yes, absolutely. And it's always good because we get to talk a little bit more about conversation. The people that we do have over on our Discord, I must say, have pretty lengthy conversations about a whole plethora of titles that I find very insightful and interesting. So check us out over there, and I think that will do it for this episode of the show. We will be back next week, probably still in this hoodie. I don't think I can get out of this, technically.
Perfect. You'll be warm all winter.
I will be warm all winter. It has fused to my skin now.
Perfect.
That's how I sell merch.
That's the selling point.
That's how we sell the merch. Yeah, if you want cloth to fuse to your skin. Only at totalpebblenokdown.com. Find it there, folks. Thank you so much. We're almost at the end of the year. There's that. Looking forward to the end.
It'll be our 1-year anniversary of starting this project.
Yes.
Soon.
Yes. In like 6-7 more months.
In February.
Yes. We will have started this project in February. First episode didn't release then, but that's everybody knows.
That's okay.
That. Yeah.
Anyway, good night, everyone.
Yeah, we're gonna get out of here. You have a good night. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.